Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today let's make a quick and easy quilt using one mini charm pack and a yard of fabric. I will be starting with this mini charm pack from Moda. There are 42 2.5-inch squares in this little bundle. And charm packs come with the fabrics that are designed for that particular line. I need 1 yard of fabric, so I went through the fabric and found one solid that I liked, and I've picked up 1 yard of that solid. So I have 42 of these little squares and 1 yard of solid. The squares are 2.5 inches. The 2.5-inch measurement is from the outside point to the outside point. The squares are pinked, which means instead of a straight cut, the cut is a zigzag. And that helps prevent fraying. I've started with the 6 widths of fabric I need to cut are going to be 2.5 inches. The first strip, I want to cut 4 pieces at 10.5 inches. Make sure your selvage is cut off, then from there measure 10.5 inches. Put those 4 10.5-inch pieces aside. With the next strip, we cut off the selvage and we need to cut 4 pieces at 8.5 inches. Put those 4 pieces at 8.5 inches aside. You're going to have a little bit left over. You will be able to get 2 of those 2.5-inch squares, and if you open up, press that seam out, you're going to be able to get 1 more square. So I now have 3 2.5-inch squares. The next strip, we're going to work in the same way. Trim off the selvage and cut 4 pieces at 6.5 inches. And then whatever's left over, you get to use that and cut 2.5-inch squares from that piece. I was able to get my 4 6.5 inches and 6 of those 2.5-inch squares. We're going to continue this. This time we need 4 4.5-inch squares, and with the leftover, cut those 2.5-inch squares. I was able to get 4 of my 2.5 by 4.5 inches and 9 2.5-inch squares. So out of those 4 strips, I was able to get 4 10.5-inch strips, 4 8.5-inch strips, 4 6.5-inch strips, and 4 4.5-inch strips, and 18 2.5-inch squares. Because I used a matching fabric inside of my little bundle, I'm going to go through and take out those 2 pieces. So now I have 20 2.5-inch squares. You're going to need a total of 29, so I'm going to be able to cut the rest of them from those strips. We need to take 4 squares out of our charm pack. We need a total of 36 of these little squares for the body of the quilt. The 4 extra are going to be borders, so choose 4 squares that you would like to be 4 corner squares. I've chosen 4 little squares that have stripes in them. Now we're going to lay this all out first and then sew it together. And that way you can lay the fabrics out as the way you want them, or you can always do them random. The squares are going to make this diamond in the center. The large strips are going to square that diamond up. So we can start with the top with the 2 largest ones at 10.5 inches. And 1 charm pack will go in the middle. The next long ones are the 6.5 inches. We need 2 charm squares on either side and a background one in the center. The next 2 are the 6.5 inches, and these edges are going to be able to match up. We're going to fill in these spaces with the fabric that has the color and the solids. So it will take 3 of them and 2 solids. The next are the 4.5 inches. So you're going to continue this so that you have the charm pack and a background, always alternating. The next row is going to be a row alternating between the charms and the solids. I'm going to place them down right opposite of the solid background fabrics and then fill in the spaces. So far we have 4 rows that have those large pieces on the end, 1 row that's completely pieced. We need 2 more rows that are just pieced. We have 4 rows with those large corners, 3 rows that are all going to be pieced. Now we're going to repeat this on the end. We're going to start with the small pieces and then build up. So we're going to continue this triangular shape. I'm just going to move those over and put them right where they belong. Now I'm going to be able to finish filling in the rest with the two piles. When all the pieces are laid out, you can really see this diamond shape. Now you can leave them and sew them randomly, but laying them out this way gives you a chance that you can rearrange them so you have a layout that you like. Once I have it all laid out the way I like, I'm going to be able to sew them together. And I will sew them together in rows. I'll take one row at a time to the machine and stitch them. When I go to press, I'm going to press the seams always going towards the little charm packs. Because there's so many different colors, I'm going to use a neutral thread, one that matches my background fabric. And in this case, it is a Carlo quilt thread. It's 100% cotton, and the color is called cream. When all the rows have been sewn together and pressed, we can now sew those rows together. Because the seams were pressed going into the colors, all of these seams are going to nestle up. When all those rows are sewn together, there's a couple of ways you can press it. You can press all of those seams going in one direction or the other, or you can press them open and flat. By pressing them open and flat, the background fabric will only ever have the background fabric in the seams. So there's not a chance of one of the dark colors poking through the background fabric. It also keeps these seams nice and flat, so when you go to quilt, it's really easy. With those 4 leftover squares that you took out at the beginning, you're going to be able to put them on corners and add borders. The squares are 2.5 inches, which means our strips need to be 2.5 inches by whatever width you have. You'll have a little bit left over from those first 6 strips that you cut. You might be able to use that into some of those borders. If your block started out at 2.5 inches, you should have a 22.5 inch square. And that's how long those strips will need to be cut. To put these corners on, it's very simple. The first thing we need to do is sew on 2 borders, opposing each other. With the 2 side borders, you will sew these squares on each end. So you're going to have the long strips with 2 squares on each end. The 2 borders that you put on are going to be pressed going towards the quilt, and those blocks that you've put on the end need to be pressed towards the block. That way, when this border is stitched onto the quilt, this corner is going to nestle together. Using a 1/4 inch, stitch both these borders on. When I do sew that second border on, I want to sew it so that the seams are facing up. And that way I can make sure that all of my seams stay in the position that I've pressed them in. With that last border put on with those cornerstones, we're done. You can press the seams any way you like. However, I do want to continue pressing mine open and flat so that it stays nice and flat to quilt and all of my background fabric stays clean. And I will have no colors showing through from the back side. Your little quilt will measure 26.5 inches. It's a great size to quilt on your own, and it makes a great little table topper. The little quilt is now done. With the leftover fabric, you're going to be able to cut some binding for it, and you'll be all ready to go. So we needed 1 charm pack and 1 yard of fabric. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.